Just when you think it can't get worse, it does. That applies to all kinds of situations in life. Sometimes it's serious stuff like relationships, or it's things like at your job where things aren't going well, then you lose a major contract and boo, somebody's going to lose their job. Or you're working on your house, or you're working on your car, and then you take things apart and you find out, oh, it's even worse than you thought. And you sit back and you go, it can't get any worse than this. But there are also those times in life where it's your health, or maybe your marriage, or your children, or your soul, where you know it's not going well, but it just keeps getting worse. And things seem to feel darker and darker and darker. And oftentimes we find ourselves asking in those moments, where's God? Why is he not here? And this is a question that I have had. This is a question I'm sure you have had. And it's a question that has plagued humanity throughout time. When things go from bad to worse and they get dark and darker, we say, where is God? This isn't a question just for you and me. Again, it's for all people. You see, when Jesus was crucified and buried, you can imagine for his disciples, that was a pretty hard time, a pretty dark time, and a time where I'm sure they looked around when Jesus died and went, how could it get any worse than this? Now, just for a minute though, imagine with me that you're Mary Magdalene and you're on the way to the tomb that Jesus is buried in to pay your respect and bring some spices to anoint Jesus' body. And how you're feeling. Probably feeling like the rest of the disciples, low. I mean, Jesus died a horrible death. Your hopes are dashed. You're on the way to the tomb. I mean, it can't get much worse. And when she gets to the tomb, his body isn't there. Now, just for a minute, put yourself in that perspective and think. She's probably going, this is really bad. It can't get any worse. And then it does. You can hear it in her words, what she speaks to Peter. This is John chapter 20, verse 2. She says to Peter, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they put him. I mean, she just lost him. He died, and now they took his body. It went from bad to worse. And the assumption is that things got worse. Mary didn't even get a chance to pay proper respects to Jesus. Things got worse, or so she thought. You've been there. I've been there, just like Mary. When life is tough and then it gets tougher, and then you may wonder, where's God? In Mary's case, he was doing something amazing. And what appeared to be even in the worst case scenarios. And see, the same is true for you and the same is true for me. When you find yourself saying things like, it can't get any worse, and then you continue to press on and you continue to seek Jesus, he will do something amazing. Not necessarily the way you figured he would, but he will do something amazing. He will come through because in the midst of your trial, in the midst of your struggle that keeps getting worse, or your health that got worse, or your relationships that got worse, or just whatever it may be that seems to go from bad to worse, Jesus is working. He says it this way in John chapter 5, verse 17. He says, my Father is always at work to this very day, and I too am working. In Mary's case, Jesus wasn't just absent, he was working. Just not the way that she conceived. And I'll encourage you today in the same manner to continue to follow Jesus when it does appear that things are getting worse. Because he's always going to show up in a big way, just not the way you expected. And how can I be so sure? Because he's always, always working.